Hi, I'm ready to tell you my teacher's tale. I got my beverage, and it's kind of a lull in the journey. So I'm going to tell you a story about a king and his best friend. And the king believed that the only way his kingdom was going to grow and prosper is if his people would get experience and upgrade their knowledge at what they enjoyed doing. So in other words, they used their passion and would make a business out of it. And that way it would contribute more to the kingdom than it would cost to help them find their passion and pursue it. So the king provided education, security, jobs, and even money so that people could focus on what they were passionate about. Now, most of the king's countrymen took advantage of this. And there were some exceptions. Some people only saw obstacles and made excuses about how they had other things to do. One of these types of people was one of the king's best friend. He never did anything more than he had to get by. One Sunday, he and the king were having breakfast, and he was complaining about how hard it was to earn money and find a better job. And then the king asked the friend, well, why don't you learn some new skills? And then maybe you could apply for better jobs. And the friend says, I don't have time for that. But the king looked at his friend and he says, you know what? I think you've got a problem with setting priorities. And his friend got really upset. And he says, well, it's easy for you to say. You're the king. You were born rich. You never had to work or study or do anything to provide for your family. You were born with all this. But the king looked his friend in the eye and said, you know, if that's what you think, then I'm going to make you a deal. You come to my palace and go into my treasury and collect as much wealth as you can. And then, but you only have until sunset to do it. So the king's friend couldn't believe his luck. He says, oh my gosh, this is amazing. He says, you're going to help me change my life. This is awesome. Hey, let me buy you a drink. And so he thought they needed to celebrate. And the king tried to calm his friend down and said, no, now remember, you only have until sunset to go and get the money. And the friend says, yeah. But let's get a plate of nachos first and have a beer. It's fine. So the friend ignored the king's urgency and, continued drinking. And he bought drinks for everybody in the bar and was celebrating how he was going to finally have it made. And after he'd been there for a couple hours, then he went home. And he told his wife how their lives were going to change. And they got so excited and so happy, they decided to celebrate their good fortune. So they went out to eat and had a fine meal with fine wine. And then they came back home, and the king's friend decided, well, you know what? I should probably be heading towards the palace. So, but he went up to get the bags that he could use to put all the money in, and he just, after all the eating and drinking, he got tired. So he laid down and took a nap. And he woke up after his nap all refreshed, and, I gotta go to the palace. So as he's walking to the palace, he sees this guy doing magic tricks. And it was really interesting, and the friend was watching and trying to figure it out. He told the magician, he says, if you show me how to do a couple of those tricks, then I'll pay you for it out of the money I'm going to get from the king. Well, the magician says, sure. So he showed him a couple of tricks, and it was about an hour or so went by. And then the king's friend realized, oh my goodness, time's running short. So he started running towards the palace. And once he got to the gates, he found out they were already shut. Well, he just went into this big old complaining session, and he wouldn't calm down until the king came to see him. So the king came down to the gates, and his friend pleaded with him, man, let me in, just let me in, dude. I'll come in and I'll get the money and I won't bother you anymore. But the king said, you know what? I gave you a deadline. And I kept telling you that you needed, to pay attention to that. And his friend says, that's not fair. You promised me a fortune, and now you're taking back your word. The day's not over. It's only midnight. You're not my friend. You're a liar. You don't want me to be rich and successful. You're against me. And the king calmly replied, friend, I gave you the opportunity of a lifetime. And instead of taking it, you threw away your precious time for things that were not important. I warned you about setting priorities, but you ignored me. And the friend says, but you were drinking and eating with me. You tricked me to waste my time. And the king responded, no. If you remember, I warned you to mind your time and focus on the opportunity in front of you. But you didn't want to listen to me. And there was nothing I could have done but to leave you to your own choices. Now you've learned a life-changing lesson in not taking advantage of a life-changing opportunity. And that's my gift to you. I hope you're mindful about setting priorities in the future. Opportunities will come, but you need to be able to see them and take advantage of them. So the king's friend went home with a different kind of treasure than he expected. And he shared with his wife the lesson that would change both of them. And eventually, they soon prospered because they learned how to set priorities and manage their time. So what could you take away from this?